Good morning, everyone. My name is Sarah, and I am a compulsive overeater. It's really nice to be here this morning and to be asked to do this share. Yeah, step 2, came to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity. So for me, what that says is that there's 2 parts to this step. There's a higher power part to it, there's a power part to it, and there's a sanity part to it. And when I came to this program, I didn't have a problem with the power part of it, or I'm going to use the phrase a higher power part of it. I didn't have a problem with that. And it talks in this step about, it says, you know, there are some who won't believe in God, there are some who can't believe in God, and there are others who believe in God but don't think he can help them with this issue. That was me, the third option. I can remember saying to the person who 12-stepped me into this program, she said, "Do you pray about your food?" And I said, "No, I do not." She said, "Well, what makes you most unhappy in life?" And before she'd asked the question, I said, "Oh, food and abuse of it and history of abusing it." And she said, "Well, isn't that worth praying about?" And I had always thought, you know, I was weak-willed, greedy, and you don't bother, you know, the God of anyone's understanding with food issues. You just get on with it and change your behavior. So, you know, that was a really, really big thing for me, a really big thing. And then the other part of the step is it can restore us to sanity. So if I'm going to be restored to sanity, that means I must recognize my insanity. Therefore, I must have done step 1, because step 1's all about unmanageability and insanity. So that was important for me. You know, and it doesn't say in here, it doesn't say a power greater than ourselves did restore us to sanity. It says could restore us to sanity, which for me implies that there's action needed on my part, and also that there's choice. You know, you're going to be relieved of this, Sarah, but you've got to make a choice here that you're going to take that leap of faith. You're going to go with this. You know, there's some action needed on your part, some spiritual action, and absolutely some physical action as well. And that's really, really, you know, key for me. And it's, you know, it's all about faith. It's all about, for me, believing differently. You know, leaving behind that old thing of you're greedy and weak-willed, and adopting this idea that actually, Sarah, this is a disease. You don't eat like other people. You know, you look for rewards in food that other people just, that normal eaters, perhaps, I don't know what a normal eater is, because I'm not one. You need a program to help you with food, because for me, you know, I realized that the food issues had blighted my life from the age of, you know, from a child, really, from a child. And then it got worse as I got older, and then it was bad in my 20s and my 30s and my 40s till I found this program. So yeah. And then it talks in this in step 2 about how do we take it easy? You know, how do we ease into this, and you know, and sort of take it easy. And you know, I kind of like that, because this program didn't ask me to do initially loads of elaborate writing, loads of elaborate exercise, extremely complicated food plans. It wasn't any of that. It was asking me to physically adopt a plan of eating, which was taken from the Dignity of Choice. My food sponsor said, choose one of these menus, one of these, you know, from the Dignity of Choice. She said, I suggest you go with the first one, which had served her well for years. And that is how I went with it. And I was, I suppose, as desperate. I was back in the insanity of food. I'd I'd come out of it and into it and out of it and into it. But, you know, my weight would fluctuate, but my insanity around food was always there. So, you know, step 2, be restored to sanity. This is the way I was going to do it. And you know, quite simply in the step reading, it says, we're not demanding that you believe anything. So I wasn't expected with this program to leave behind my old faith or step up my old faith. It was, in that way, it's foolproof. In my opinion, this 12-step program is foolproof unless you don't want it. And if you don't want to stop eating miserably and painfully and dangerously, then it's not the program for you anyway. But for me, you know, this program, it didn't demand I believe anything. It just suggested that one day at a time, I eat abstinently and I pray to a higher power that I could, you know, design for myself or use for myself. And that was all I had to do. And I didn't even have to go, yeah, I've got step 2, I've got it 100%. It was always about being open-minded. And I love what it says. It says, just resign from the debating society. Just, you know, just resign. And in terms of the physical and practical side of this program, I was able to just resign. You know, I didn't from the debating society. I didn't sort of, because I tried all the diet programs and so on. So I was ready in a practical sense to take gentle exercise, eat sensibly, eat abstinently, knowing that the bonus would be, you know, physical weight loss. I'm not a terribly complicated person. So when it talks in step 2, it talks about people who have a real struggle with the higher power part of this program. And I'm not sort of in any way minimizing how painful that must be, but knowing I had a higher power was not hard for me. But as I said earlier, what was hard for me was, or what was a revelation for me, was believing that this higher power wanted to hear from me about my greediness, about my, you know, bags of binge foods and so on. You know, and it has very much been the case that it does want to hear from me, you know, every day and regularly. So, you know, it says, and I stopped arguing and I began to see and I began to feel, you know, I began to see that the weight was coming off and I began to feel better. Not only about my weight, I began to feel better about myself, about my past, and I had hope for the future. And that, you know, that's hard to put into words, how wonderful that is. And in the step towards the end of it, it references, you know, God's will, and, you know, I didn't, you know, and I had a very positive upbringing in a religion. I had no real concept until I came to this 12-step program, this idea of God's will and my free will. And here I was, again, I wasn't asked, it was suggested that I get my head around, which took a lot of conversations with my sponsor. I didn't just read this step and go, oh, I've got that. Oh, that's interesting. I understand that. You know, it all took a lot of time and some pain, not an awful lot, conversations with my sponsor about what God's will was for me and what my will was for me and what happened when I let my, you know, when I would let my free will take over, and that it was God's will for me to be happy and healthy. And what made me happy and healthy, I came to see, was abstinence. And so that was, yeah, that was really kind of, that was really powerful. Is it 5 minutes? Did someone say?
5 minutes left.
Thanks. Thank you very much. Thank you. And yeah, it talks about, you know, we found the riddle's answer. And I guess it was a riddle to me, because I can remember in my sort of saner moments, madness of the food, like, but in my saner moments, you know, you get those moments of clarity when you can think, oh, what's going on here? And you bat it. And I can remember saying, why can't I get to the middle? Why can't I get to the middle? And what I mean by that is I was always massively overeating, but I was going to start a diet tomorrow or Monday. So that was all right. I could eat today. So I used to say, why can't I get to the middle? Because I'm always massively overeating, or I'd go to the other extreme and undereat, you know, and try and compensate and lose weight. And what this program gives me is that ability. I'm in the middle, you know, there's a saying, isn't there? Be in the middle of the bed, in the middle of the program. And, you know, one day at a time, this program allows me to stay in the middle, you know, because I eat regularly and I eat certain foods that are part of my abstinent plan, you know, and there's a lovely rhythm there. You know, I eat at certain times of the day. I don't eat before certain times, etc. And there's a lovely rhythm there. And, you know, that's the riddle. The riddle was, or the riddle was, I couldn't do food. I couldn't do the food part of my life at all. And this is the riddle's answer, which then brings me to the relief of it. And it talks about sanity is defined as soundness of mind. And for me, that's me living in the, you know, in the absolute, relief of the program. I'm not, what's that phrase about? I don't have to turn up for every fight. And I don't mean, I wasn't a terribly sort of aggressive person, didn't come into conflict with a lot of people, but the conflict in my head all the time. Am I going to have a day off the food, or a day on the food? You know, that's insanity. You know, that's insanity. And in step 2, it is suggested that if I've done step 1 and then I'm following step 2, you know, and I've got a power of some sort, that I'm going to be restored to some sort of power, and I'm going to have sanity. And please don't get me wrong, and I know you'll all identify with this, some days I'm still quite insane, but I don't pick up the food. I've been abstinent for a little over a year now. I don't pick up the food now. I do pick up the phone to my sponsor, who, she understands me. She understands me outside of OA. She understands me very much within OA. And excuse me. For me, OA is the difference between a happy life and a very unhappy life. And I am completely aware of the fact that my overeating could have led to death, either from extreme overweight, or the way I would drive and be veering along the road while, you know, eating could have caused all sorts of accidents. So one day at a time, by doing step 1, by remembering step 1, and by doing step 2, and you know, and all the other steps as and when. There's a phrase somewhere, it talks about a life of sane and happy usefulness, and I, you know, I find that very powerful in my own small way. And I have to watch my humility as well, because I can be a great one when people say, you look well and you've lost weight. You know, I've got to say to myself, I'm nothing. You know, OA does the work, as it were. The higher power, which works through the people in OA, does the work. So I think I'm probably very near to my time there. So I'm going to say thank you ever so much for listening, and I'll leave it there. Thank you.